This is KC Sports Tonight.
And away we go on the Wednesday edition of KC Sports Tonight. Scott Reiss, Neal Jones, here to talk all things Kansas City sports, or at least what we want to talk about, which today is some bad news off the top, Neal. It's been an eventful offseason, I would say, for Kansas basketball. Some good. They've got some dynamite talent coming in through the transfer portal. They get Hunter Dickinson back for a sixth year, which is huge. And then, you lose Johnny Furphy to the draft. Not unexpected, but still could have gone either way. But this we did not see coming, obviously. Elmarko Jackson, the former McDonald's All-American, who admittedly underperformed a bit, I think most would agree, in his freshman season, but was, by all accounts, poised to really take a step forward in year two. He tore his patellar tendon in his knee yesterday at the Bill Self camp for kids. Just a freak accident. He's on the shelf for a year. He'll miss the entire 2024-25 college basketball season. So that's a blow.
This used to be an injury, Scott, that it could be it take you almost 2 full years to recover from it. They've gotten a lot better at working with this, but it's still going to be really tough for him to come back and be at the same level. I don't know if people remember this, but in the loss to Cincinnati in the Big 12 championship, in the Big 12 tournament in Kansas City, a night that KU fans would just as soon forget, the bottom line was he made maybe the most exciting play in the game. I mean, remember they had guys out sick and injured and everything. So they had 2 starters out. He came in and went coast to coast, got a rebound or got a loose ball and goes coast to coast and just throws it down, just explodes. And I asked him about it a week later when they were at the NCAA tournament up in Des Moines. I said, hey, what was that? And he goes, everybody's asking me, even the coaches are like, where's that been? And you did get the feeling that maybe he was going to be a much different player. He was going to know the offense. He spent so much of last year trying to figure out where he was supposed to be in the offense and learn how to run it, that I think he thought, the coach said he was thinking too much and playing not enough. So you felt like he might be a guy that would take a big step forward. A really disappointment for him. I was over there on Sunday and had a chance to talk to 2 of the new players, and certainly everybody over there is very optimistic that Kansas is going to be really good. And Scott, I think we should remember the first 15, 18 games of the season last year, Kansas was as good as anybody. They whipped up on the eventual national champion. Kansas was good until they lost a couple of starters.
They were preseason number 1. And you know what? They might be preseason number 1 again this year. It's probably either going to be Kansas or Alabama. And you've got to feel for Bill Self because priority number 1 this offseason was don't let history repeat itself. The depth was such an issue last year, part of it through no fault of his own. But the fact remains they didn't have enough dudes once they got to the end of the season and then into the postseason. And so he went out and he brings in 5 or 6 guys in the portal, and you've got 3 starters back and you've got a couple of key reserves back. So it's all good and the roster's set. And I talked to Brian Haney earlier today, and he was saying that even before the Elmarko injury, Self wanted to probably bring in at least 1 more guy. Yep. Now maybe you got to go bring in 2 more guys. He does not want to be 8 deep going into the season again. He wants to be 10, 11, even 12 deep of guys that he trusts in that rotation next year.
He wants explosive guys who can come in and be stoppers on defense, can rebound, can contest things down low. These pieces that you don't need for every game, but you need them when you need them, and especially the ability to shoot the jumper to open up the lane for his big guy down low. I mean, he's got a big man who does a lot of damage out front, up top with his shooting the 3 or shooting the mid-range jumper. But the fact is, he would like some people who could stretch the defense and actually hit jump shots. Do you remember how he was in Salt Lake City, his reaction after that terrible loss to Gonzaga? He said he'd been thinking about it for a month. He had been thinking about the offseason and about next year's team, and how he goes, look, we had injuries, but we as a staff could have done a lot better in bringing players in who would give us options in situations like this. I think he blamed himself, blamed his assistant coaches for not having more talent. It's Kansas, and there's a transfer portal. There is, and now
right.
with NIL,
the world is your oyster.
I mean, come on. I mean, it's like this is not like you're at Murray State, or some small school, a mid-major, Or look at South Dakota State. South Dakota State does a great job of developing a kid from Lawrence High School, and you expect he's a conference player of the year in the Summit League. You figure you're going to lose him. They did lose him to the University of Kansas.
Yeah.
But if you're at Kansas, you don't expect to be short of talent, and they really were short of talent after about the halfway point.
Yeah, Zeke Mayo, the kid you're talking about from South Dakota State, and he's one of, again, just five or six impact transfers that you add to Hunter Dickinson and DeJuan Harris and KJ Adams, but sadly not Elmarko Jackson. I guess the silver lining here is he should be good to go a year from now, which means he's not bolting for the NBA, and I would assume that he would be back on the Kansas plans for now his junior season. And in this day and age, anytime you can actually count on a kid who you know is going to come back next year, that's worth something. So
yeah, and they had a pretty good player in Ochai Agbaji who stuck around. And they kind of knew he was going to stick around, and he stuck around. They won a national championship his senior year. I like Elmarko. I thought he was a really nice guy. I thought in talking to him, you know, I didn't know what to expect, and when I interviewed him for the first time, I was like, wow, he really is a good guy, and he's a team first guy in a lot of ways. But he knew, quite frankly, that he had to take a step forward for Kansas for him to make a big difference. He didn't hit his jump shot, and he was not able to be explosive by slashing to the lane, which is kind of what I thought he was going to be doing, having seen what he did in high school as a McDonald's All-America. I was surprised that he took it away. But part of that, one of the assistant coaches said he doesn't know the offense. He's one of those kids who goes in, he's trying to figure out where he's supposed to be. You'd think a guy like that, you just find a space on the floor and get me the ball and I'll explode.
Right.
It doesn't work that way at the University of Kansas.
No, and maybe then you start thinking too much, and obviously that's a recipe for disaster as well. All right, let's move on to topic number 2, which is the Kansas City Royals, who, by the way, will not play baseball today. Rained out in Cleveland. They'll make it up as part of a split doubleheader on August 26th. And so that gives us more time to talk about yesterday, which was a great big bummer. And here's the thing. A quick synopsis for those of you who didn't see what happened in yesterday's game. They lost 8-5, but there's way more to it than that. They were up 5-0 with Seth Lugo on the mound, who's been arguably the best pitcher in the American League to this point in the season. And Lugo couldn't hold it. They got a couple of 2-run homers from Bobby Witt, but Lugo gave it up. It was 5-5. And then with Lugo out of the game, 7th inning, bases loaded, 2 out. All you need is a ground ball, a fly ball, whatever. You get out of the inning, you take your chances in a tie game. They get the ground ball to Bobby Witt. He goes to step on second, but the base runner beats him to the bag, so then he's got to throw to first, and he still had plenty of time to get the out at first. But something just went awry in his brain. I think he was surprised that the runner, Josh Naylor, got to second base as quickly as he did, and he threw it past Vinny Pasquantino into the dugout. All 3 runs scored. It was 8-5, and that was the final. So, look, if it's 5-5, they play on, they go to extra innings. Maybe they lose the game anyway. We'll never know. But losing in that fashion is painful, and not just because of that particular game, Neil, but because, A, you're playing the first-place team, the team you're chasing in the division, so it's inherently a big deal. But I think for me, the bigger problem is they've lost 7 of their last 9 games. And it seems like these aren't just, oh, we went out, we lost 5-2, and it was a blah baseball game. It seems like every one of these losses, something excruciating happens. You know, lately it's been they're down multiple runs in the 9th, and they score multiple runs to get within 1, and they've got the tying run, but they can't quite close the deal. Yet it just seems like every day something painful happens, and it's made this stretch, losing 7 of 9, I think a little bit harder to take than it was just of, we lost a bunch of 5-2 games, no big whoop. No,
there's no question. And the fact that they're doing it against largely, think about that, the 4 games up in Minneapolis against the Twins. Yeah. That was going to be a measuring stick. You and I talked about that last week. You brought that up, that this was going to be a big series. They had every opportunity to win those games, and they couldn't get them done. They had so many mistakes early in games. They'd dig a hole, and then like you pointed out, they scratched and fought back and didn't have a whole lot to show for. Just 1 win up in Minneapolis. Now they're in Cleveland. These are the games you need to start playing good in, if for no other reason you're playing teams in your division. The Royals continue to have, they're 10 games over 500. They got the 4th best record in the American League. There's a lot to like. But, Scott, when your bullpen is inconsistent, it will poison the entire can poison an entire baseball team, because you scratch and fight and scuffle, and you build a lead, and then the guy that comes in to pitch the ninth, or the guy that pitches the eighth, or the guy who pitches up the seventh, whomever it is in the bullpen, if they can't get it done, I think it's doubly difficult to see him lose this way.
Yeah.
And plus, I don't know about you, but it sure seems to me that teams feel like, hey, if we hang around with these guys, they might give it back to us. They remind me of a team kind of like the Royals in 2012 and 13. They were still learning how to win. They had some decent talent, but as individuals, but they had not put together the whole picture collectively, and they were still learning how to win, and that meant that you lost games like last night's game. There's no way a major league team a good major league team should ever lose when you're up 5-0.
Yeah, and I think that the bullpen is certainly a concern. It's not bad, but you use the word inconsistent. It is inconsistent. I don't think it's good enough if you want to be a playoff team. J.J. Piccolo can and will address that, but you heard him this morning on the radio. I mean, it's not as easy as it used to be to make moves this early in the season, because other than the White Sox, in the American League, everybody's in it, right? Because you get the extra wild card, so it's tougher to make moves. You have to overpay right now, whereas usually relief pitching is the one aspect of the game in terms of personnel that you can go out and get and not have to give up major capital to do it before the trade deadline.
No, you're right. You can go out and get a guy who's not going to start for a team and who has a limited role, but who has a live arm.
Yep.
And you can take a chance on him, and sometimes they can come in and give you some help. Certainly the Royals were built. They weren't built on superstar relievers. They were built around guys who, in Wade Davis's case, was a failed starter. He came to Kansas City to resurrect his career as a starting pitcher, and he ended up being the best setup man in all of baseball with some of the most historic numbers of all time. So you can go out and you can pilfer people, because what they want, they're looking at a guy as a starter. Well, Kansas City doesn't necessarily need a starter. They need somebody who can be a bridge to the closer, or can eventually perhaps be the closer. I think it's interesting that the perception is you don't want to be the first team that starts trading. I've heard that and I've read that over the years, that you don't want to be the first team unless you're the White Sox, and it's just clear. You don't want to be the first one to throw up the white flag.
Oh, that starts trading away guys.
Yeah.
Okay, on that. I was going to say, because the Padres went out and got Luis Arraez from the Marlins, and they're not regretting that. But from the Miami side, I see what you're saying.
So do you have the guy? If you're a GM and you want to raise the white flag now,
right?
It sends a lot of signals to your team as well as it does to the fan base.
And the Marlins were a playoff team last year, and they're trading their best hitter in May. So there's something to that. It will loosen up obviously in the coming weeks, and surely once you get into July. But it's got to be a little frustrating for JJ. I know he'd like to go out right now. The other problem is the Royals don't have a great farm system. So it's not like they are dealing from a position of strength when it comes to trying to make this deal. There are teams out there like the Orioles, like the Dodgers, who just have so much minor league talent that they could trade a top prospect or two or three and not even blink, and it won't destroy their farm system, and they can help the major league team. So it's going to be tough. I mean, the Royals are not in a position like those other clubs. But as you mentioned, they're 10 games over 500. They're very much in a playoff spot right now. So, pedal to the metal and try and figure it out. And again, it's not like the bullpen is a disaster, but it's been inconsistent. They're starting to walk too many guys. They're also starting to leak oil a little bit defensively. This was, up until a couple of weeks ago, the top defensive team in the majors, and they've made more key errors in the last 2 weeks than I think really in the first 2 months.
That Memorial Day Monday, my wife and I went out and got a hamburger in the late afternoon, and watched about 3 innings of the Twins game, or 4 innings of the Twins game, and there were 2 fly balls hit to the outfield.
Oh, Garrett Hampson, left field, is that the one?
Well, I thought it was MJ Melendez.
Oh, okay, it's a different game then.
And it was Bobby Witt who he ran out into shallow. He ran out behind second base and was going to make a play, and he was surrounded by people. You're supposed to give him room. When a guy calls for it and he was yelling, he was calling for it,
Right.
then you got to peel off. They didn't peel off, and so he's kind of, we've all been there. If we play baseball or softball, you think it's your ball and you've called it, but you feel someone's going to run over you,
yeah, no.
so you back off, and he drops it, and that precipitated that terrible inning, and that cost the Royals game 1 of that series against the Twins. You just and the MJ Melendez, they kept showing that. They didn't have the sound turned up, but they kept replaying that, and it was a tough play. He had to come in, and he had the ball in his glove, and then when he hit the ground, he dropped it. But it was a tough play, and I'm like, if you want to show a bad outfield play, it was when Bobby went back there, and there's all these people around him. That bothered me on 2. 1, that he would drop the ball, and 2, that his teammates wouldn't get the heck out of Dodge.
Yeah, it's been a lot of subtleties, just subtle examples of bad baseball. They've played really good baseball for the bulk of this season, but there have been enough instances of bad baseball over the last couple of weeks, and they've cost them games. And, losing 7 out of 9, that almost negates the 8-game winning streak they had a couple of weeks ago. So we'll see what happens. They've got one more tomorrow. Presumably they'll push Brady Singer back. He was supposed to pitch today in the rainout. Let's talk a little college football, because why not? The Missouri Tigers have an interesting non-conference schedule. We have it there at the bottom of the screen. Neal, this is not exactly
Scott, we're talking football. That's got to be a basketball schedule. Are you sure? They're playing Murray State in football. Boston College. Okay, Boston College beat them. Let me look. No, it's on my paper. You're right. That's their football. That looks like either a minor league baseball schedule or a basketball schedule. That's an SEC football schedule?
Well, it's a non-conference SEC football schedule. Yes, it is. Murray State, Buffalo, Boston College, and at UMass. Now, this is sort of the SEC way. I mean, this is what they do, right? They play an 8-game conference schedule as opposed to 9 games for some of the other big boys. And they schedule, Little Sisters of the Poor in either 3 or all 4 of those non-conference games to bulk up their abilities for the games that actually matter. So I guess Missouri is just doing it the SEC way, because here you go.
Little Sisters of the Poor, right now, I could tell you would be favored over two of those teams.
Of those 4?
If they were played on a neutral side. If they had, of course, they don't play at home because they're not allowed to. They're the Little Sisters of the Poor. But I understand that the SEC does it that way. The big boys don't. Georgia and Alabama, LSU, they're willing to play people, generally speaking, not home and home. They generally play.
They'll play like one legit game a year, and then the other 3 are 66-2.
But the legitimate game is at a neutral site.
Sure. Yep.
I think LSU might be playing in Vegas. They're playing in Vegas. Mm-hmm. They'll play neutral sites, which is better than not playing anybody at all.
Right.
I'm trying to think. Did Alabama did a home and home with Texas when Texas was in the SEC, not in the SEC. Mm-hmm. So that's a good sign. Oklahoma had at LSU. They played Tennessee home and home. They had LSU on the schedule home and home, but that whole series went away because they're in the same league, and so they had to drop it. But I understand that. The reason we brought this up today is there's a really good columnist in Oklahoma City and Tulsa named Barry Trammell. Barry Trammell is one of the top college football writers in the entire country as a columnist. He breaks this stuff down and talks about non-conference schedules and strength of schedule and all this stuff. And he's the one who rated all the SEC non-conference schedules and put Missouri as number 16. Now, the only reason we care about this is because we don't have to go. We're not season ticket holders, so we don't have to go to any of those games. But in all but one of them, they're playing at UMass, believe it or not. The other ones are at home. But the reason it might matter is there's a 12-game playoff. And, I think Missouri's got a great chance. Last year, they would have been in it. Sure. They would have been one of the top 12 teams.
Oh, no doubt.
2 years ago, Kansas State would have been in it.
Yeah.
But the fact is, at the end of the year, towards the end of the year, middle of November, we're going to be talking about strength of schedule. And, hey, listen, you got 3 SEC teams that are all in. Missouri's kind of in the 3rd or 4th spot in the SEC. Are they in? They may pick a team, and Sankey, the SEC commissioner, is really strong in saying, look, don't go by record, go by who you played, go by strength of schedule. Well, if you go by strength of schedule, this may end up hurting Mizzou. Certainly, Missouri has a number of other good teams, preseason ranked teams on their schedule. So if they run the table, they're safely in. But if not, it's this kind of garbage that can really hurt you. And remember, Missouri is not really a blue blood. They get treated like an ugly stepchild by the SEC people. And I think that around the country, people, oh, yeah, they were good. I don't think they know how good Missouri was. So anytime you can schedule better teams in the non-con, especially a big name, they don't have to be a good team, but a big name, I think you benefit. Certainly Missouri benefited from beating K-State last year because K-State went in as a ranked team.
Just for comparison's sake, I checked Alabama's schedule. Their non-conference, Western Kentucky, USF, that would be South Florida, Wisconsin, and Mercer.
I think they're at Wisconsin, aren't they?
They are at Wisconsin.
Yeah,
so
so
have
that's
one,
a true road.
one real, legit test, and the other three are gimmies. Although South Florida is better than Murray State, but
we will learn a lot about this, about the playoffs. I mean, we may be in the middle of November or the last weekend of November. You and I might be sitting here talking about the fact, Mizzou's got 3 losses, but they're still a shoo-in. Because the SEC is going to have 3 teams in the playoff, and they're the 3rd best team in the SEC.
Yeah, maybe.
We can't predict. I mean,
No.
It was what used to be, you had to win. You had to win. If you're Ohio State, Michigan, the winner has a chance to go to the playoffs. The loser doesn't.
Right.
Or, Georgia, Alabama, or OU, Texas. Not going to be a factor. With 12 playoff teams, if you're in the right conference, a power conference like the SEC,
Yep.
If you're considered a blue blood and you've been around the top 4 or 5 all year, you can survive 2 losses and still probably make it.
No, margin for error is something that was virtually non-existent in previous incarnations of the BCS and the college football playoff. Now it exists with 12 teams. So, I think a lot of people are they embrace that. It's nice. You can lose a game or two and you're not dead.
LSU, if I'm not mistaken, this season in football will play both USC, I think, in Vegas. They'll also play UCLA. And they are doing what all of the Pac-12 teams are not doing. They're playing 2 teams from and who knows why they scheduled this, but LSU, back in the day when they made these schedules up, they wanted a big-time schedule because they wanted to be in the mix for the playoffs, and nobody knew until about 3 years ago or 2 years ago or a year and a half ago that there was going to be a 12-game playoff. Everyone thought it was going to happen, but it was not a done deal. And so everybody's scheduled differently. It'll be interesting to see how much maybe Missouri is leading the curve. Maybe what they are doing this year by scheduling awful teams in the non-con. Maybe that's what everyone's going to be doing in years to come because there'll be 12 teams in the playoff.
Blueprint remains a work in progress for sure. Okay, something a little fun. I did it yesterday with Marlia on this program, and since Neal is here today and he is synonymous with television fun, I asked Marlia yesterday, what were your coolest television moments?
What was her best moment?
For her, it was the Kansas National Championship.
Yeah, because she worked that with Danny Welniak and I. We made it fun for her.
I think she said it was in spite of the fact, actually, that she worked it with you. It was still the coolest. But, look, with all due respect, Marlia's been doing this for 6 years. You've been doing this for 66 years. Yeah. So your sample size is significant. I imagine you could go on about 30 different favorite moments of your TV career, but give us 1 or 2 that stick out.
Well, I got into this business because my parents were in the business, and they got me set up in middle school, junior high school, by helping the crews out at the Oklahoma and Oklahoma State football games. So I got to go to games and be on the sideline. Back then it was film. You'd run film to the cameraman who were down there shooting the TV film. And so I got to be in a lot of locker rooms, and so I was in locker rooms after 3 national championships in college football. That was pretty cool. Certainly, I was covering Oklahoma when Kansas beat them in 1988. I got to go in and interview Larry Brown and Danny Manning in the Kansas locker room. Larry Brown was very, very kind. I'd met him during recruiting. He was very, very nice. Larry Brown, the Kansas coach at that time, had kind of an interesting reputation, but he was a great guy. And it was fun to go in there and see the joy because they were such a long shot. I thought they were dead at the Big 12 or Big 8 basketball tournament there in 1988. So that is That's truly one of my highlights. I got to be there for the 2007 Kansas-Missouri football game. They were both in the top 3. The winner was going to have a chance to be number 1 and play for a national championship. Sellout crowd at Arrowhead Stadium, half and half, or maybe a little more Missouri fans than Kansas fans. Scott, that was really, nobody saw it coming. Game day was there. The whole college football world was watching it, and it was fun because it wasn't Auburn and Alabama or Oklahoma and Nebraska or USC and Notre Dame.
Right.
It was Kansas and Missouri, and that was truly a remarkable moment.
All right, so from the greatest of the great to the mildly embarrassing, you got anything for us there? Most embarrassing moment in your TV
I was
career?
thinking of, you brought this up a few minutes ago, and I was trying to think. I've had so many embarrassing moments.
They all run together.
You know, when you're, they come to you and you're talking,
Right.
and then all these people we used to have floor crews that ran the cameras. Now they're robots. They're running around and all this stuff, and you realize your microphone is dead. You've got it on, but it's dead,
Right.
and you don't know what to do. And back in those days, Scott, we had like 5-minute sportscasts, so you can't talk. So what are they going to do? And so the weatherman came over and back then and
Here's the mic.
pulled
Talk into
so
it.
I had to hold the mic like
Yeah.
this because it wouldn't stretch far enough to put. So I've had some pretty good moments. One time I ran in from a story and had to go on set, and this was in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And when I got in, I realized I don't have my contacts in.
Ooh.
Because I've been shooting, and back then I didn't wear them when I shot. So I'm trying to read the prompter, and I'm like doing
that's
one
rough.
of these. But these were all, I should have just said that no tapes exist, so I should have just denied it. I'd be a good politician if I just lied and denied it.
You're right. Can't get away with that anymore. Everything is on tape. All right, well, good stuff. Fun 27 minutes for us here on this Wednesday. I'm going to actually, I'm replacing you tomorrow with a very special guest. Brad Stevens is going to come on the show and talk sports. Maybe I'll ask him about his embarrassing moments tomorrow, because I'm guessing
Well, what was your top moment in embarrassing?
So we just did this yesterday. My top moments for me, first time I sat on the Sports Center set, no brainer, just surreal, out of body, thinking, what the hell?
Were you visiting your dad?
Yeah, right. No. What am I doing sitting here? And the other one was the first home game in the 2010 World Series, Giants Rangers. I was working for NBC Sports Bay Area and hosting the Giants post-game show out in Willie Mays Plaza, and they had won the game. And remember, this is when this was the first of the 3 out of 5, so they hadn't won a World Series in 50-plus years. And, they were up 2-1 in the series after the win, and there were thousands of people behind our set just going crazy bananas the entire time. They were throwing everything at us, from bras to batteries, and just the electricity and the energy of doing a post-game show for the team that it was about to win the World Series, and then, of course, getting to do the same thing when they won it a few days later in Texas. So
That's the Giants, man. It's like rooting for Russia.
Believe me,
How
I know.
could
As a guy
you do the Giants?
You know what?
show?
As a guy who grew up a Dodger fan, right, and I was thrust into that role, but you know what? It's funny how when you have a vested interest in a team, all of a sudden that hatred that may have existed for a couple of decades, it's not quite so strong.
Not
you know
with
what?
me.
Yeah.
No way.
Well.
I'd still be going, okay, the Giants win.
Back to you. And most embarrassing, there were 2. One at ESPN doing an episode or a show of ESPN News, and it was right after I'd gotten there. I was completely NASCAR illiterate. Never knew, never cared. Grew up in California. It was the day Dale Earnhardt died, and I know you've got stories about that too. But I was doing the ESPN News. It's like the same half-hour loop every half hour, same stories. And one half hour, I think I was a little loopy and I was not paying attention, and I killed Dale Jarrett instead of Dale Earnhardt. So that was bad. And because to me, a NASCAR guy named Dale, I had no idea at the time.
How was Dale Jarrett about that?
We didn't get any angry letters, so hopefully he wasn't watching. And the other one was reading a story way back in the day about Scottie Pippen missing a series because of a herniated disc, and I neglected to pronounce the S in disc. And all of a sudden, that term has an entirely different meaning. when you read it that way. So yeah.
How about this one for an embarrassing moment? I was out at Arrowhead. We were doing a post-game show from the Chiefs when they were really bad, and they won the game. They actually won a home game. So I'm out there, and we have a producer who had never produced sports, and the Chiefs, I think they had a safety, or they got something on the last play of the game. It was a wild play, and so they say the score is 22-18 or something, and it turns out that the score was actually, or it was 20. It was like a 3-point game. Well, the last 2 points didn't matter because it didn't happen, and so they wiped it off. But our producer didn't notice because he wasn't a football guy. He didn't notice that. Wait a minute, they've looked at this and it's not it's not a safety or whatever it was. Well, the sports director was going downstairs. He gets down there. He doesn't know that while he's been going downstairs that they've changed it. They come out.